in today's lesson, I'm going to explain lots of little things that you need to remember. And as we go through, it's some things from last week, and as we go through today and tomorrow, you will have to put a lot of that information together. So you might need to go back and watch some of the other videos. I will try and remind you of everything you need to know in this video, but you will need to make notes, you will need to rewind, you will need to pause, because it's really important you remember all these little things. So the first thing is that a straight line we call a line segment. A segment just means part of something. A segment something is part of something. So this is part of a line. This is the part we're bothered by. And sometimes they will put letters at the end of these lines. There can be any letters. They're usually capitals, so it'll be capital letters, and that is important that you use capitals. So this would be the line segment CD. And if we're looking at a shape, for instance, this shape, which is a square, these lines on the sides show that all the sides are the same length. This is a square. We would label each vertex with a capital letter, and we would use those to describe parts of the shape. So we might say the line segment AB. We wouldn't write line segment, we'd say that, but we'd just write AB. That means this line here, because it's from A to B. You could say BA, it doesn't matter which direction you do, but you are thinking about that line. Two important words to do with lines that you might have heard before are parallel and perpendicular. Now, you may have heard of parallel lines, and I just want to show you, this is called a Freyer model. This is sort of talks about the word parallel and explains to you what it means. So the first thing I'm going to do is just read the definition. Parallel lines are straight lines that will never meet no matter how far they are extended. So if you look underneath at the examples, so this set of parallel lines, you could keep them going, you could extend them, draw them, they will never ever meet their parallel. This set of lines, it doesn't matter that one is shorter than the other. If you kept going, they would never meet, so they're parallel. One thing to notice is very often we use these arrows. They are notation to show that lines are parallel, and they will do that in exams. Looking at this picture, these lines are parallel. It doesn't matter that they're different lengths because we can just extend them. We can always extend a line if we need to. And then looking at the picture of the square, these lines are parallel. Now, there's another set of parallel lines in this picture. The other set is here. These lines are parallel. And notice this time I use two little arrows because these ones are parallel to each other. They're not parallel to the ones I put the red lines on though. Those red ones are also parallel to each other. So you have to show, when you're putting the little lines on, you have to show which pair of lines are parallel. So if we go over here now to this, up here in the corner, to this GCSE question, it describes a shape, A, B, C, D, E, and that just means this shape. And then it asks to write down a line that's parallel to AB. Well, AB is here. Where do you think the other line is that's parallel? The parallel line is ED. Is it okay to call it DE? Yes, it doesn't matter which way you describe the line. That line could be called ED or DE, and they are parallel, because if we extended them, they will never meet. At the bottom here, the non-examples, these are examples. So if you look at this picture first, you can see that if you were to extend these lines, they would eventually meet there. That's why they're not parallel. And the problem with these two, if you notice, there's an important word in the definition, straight. The lines have to be straight. These two are curved lines, so they're not classed as parallel, because parallel only applies to straight lines. So, parallel lines are lines that never meet. You might want to pause the video now and just make some notes about that in your book. The next thing you need to think about is perpendicular lines. Perpendicular lines, and look at the definition, lines are perpendicular if, when they are connected, they would meet at 90 degrees, and that's really important. Remember, 90 degrees is a quarter turn. 90 degrees is called a right angle. So often people say that perpendicular lines meet at a right angle. Okay, so that's perpendicular lines. Very different to parallel. Parallel don't meet, perpendicular meet at a right angle. Looking at these examples, you can see the T shape, they're meeting at a right angle. This L shape, they're meeting at a right angle. And look in the square, you can see that this side is perpendicular to this side, and you could do that in any corner of the shape. You've got lots of perpendicular lines in there. Up at the top, this is another GCSE question. It's the same starting point, shape ABCDE is drawn. Write down a line perpendicular to AE. So look at line AE, give me the name of a line that's perpendicular. So there's a right angle here, which means AB is perpendicular. You could call it BA. There's also a right angle here, which means ED could be perpendicular. You could call that DE. So there's more than one answer to that question. The other thing to notice, by the way, there is another set of perpendicular lines in this picture. Can you see it? Okay, so this line is perpendicular to this line. They also meet at a right angle. So you have to look quite carefully to spot perpendicular lines. Down in the corner here, these are the non-examples. This angle here, these are not right angles, so that's not perpendicular. Not a right angle, not perpendicular. Not a 90-degree angle or here, so they are not perpendicular. It has to be that quarter turn right angle, 90 degrees, to make them perpendicular. So today you've got a worksheet to do. If you would like to pause the video now and just do the first bit about parallel and perpendicular lines, you can, or you can wait till the very end and do the worksheet at the end. But if you want to pause now and do the parallel and perpendicular lines section now, you can. Angles are important in both of these other things, lines and shapes. I'm just going to remind you with angles that a 90-degree angle, what do we call it? We call it a right angle. It's what perpendicular angles are, but they're quite important in shapes. You also get acute angles in shapes. Remember, they're less than 90. You get obtuse angles in shapes. Remember, they're between 90 and 180. It's not often we're going to talk about a reflex angle in shapes. So we need to remember the names of these three types of angles, but we're not going to talk about the reflex one too much today. The final thing I want to talk about today are quadrilaterals. The word quad means four. So all quadrilaterals are four-sided shapes. And the thing that you need to know about these shapes is how we distinguish between them, the notation that we put on the pictures, the properties of these shapes. So I'm just going to go through that. Some of this you'll already know. So there's three things that we think about. The angles in the shape, whether the sides are equal length, and whether the sides are parallel. So if we take a look at this first picture, which is a square, what do you know about the angles? The angles in a square are right angles. What do you know about the length of the sides? The sides have equal lengths. They're all the same length. And we use these lines to show that. Does it have any parallel lines? It does. This side is parallel to this side. The other sides, they are also parallel, but only to each other. That's why these two have two little arrows, because they're parallel to each other, and the other two just have one little arrow because they're only parallel to each other. You wouldn't say all four sides are parallel. The way you'd say it is it has two pairs of parallel sides. The next shape is a rectangle. Very similar to a square. Same thing with the parallel sides, two pairs of parallel sides. Are all the sides equal? No, these sides are equal, so we use one little dash to show that. And these sides are equal. So we use 2 little dashes because we're showing which sides are equal to each other. So it has 2 pairs of parallel sides and 2 pairs of equal length sides. The next shape is a trapezium. Look at the spelling. People often spell it wrong. Trapezium. You can see the angles on this shape. Oh, I forgot with the rectangle has right angles just like the square. Go back to the trapezium. Now, you can see this trapezium has 2 right angles, but not all trapeziums do. A trapezium can look like this, and a trapezium can look like this. There is only one thing a trapezium has to have. The only thing a trapezium has to have is 1 pair of parallel sides. Everything else in a trapezium can change. You might have 2 equal sides, you might not, because there's none in this shape A, B, C, D. You might have some right angles, you might not. Everything else can change, but you will always, in a trapezium, have 1 pair of parallel sides. I would definitely pause the video and write some notes now. Have a look at what I've just written, draw the pictures if you want, do the notation, have a think about what I mean with the notation. A square and a rectangle both have 2 pairs of parallel sides, but a trapezium only has 1 pair of parallel sides. There's other things a square and a rectangle always have. That's some equal sides and always right angles. Trapezium doesn't have to have any of those. The only thing it always has is 1 pair of parallel sides. The next shape is a parallelogram. Now, the parallelogram, it tells you in the name of it that it's going to have some parallel sides. So think carefully about the notation. This side is parallel to this side. If I was to extend those 2 lines, I would just go on forever. But also, this side is parallel to this side. Remember the reason for me having 2 little arrows? I have to show which sides are parallel to each other. For instance, this side is not parallel to this side, so I wouldn't use arrows there because they are not parallel. The angles in a parallelogram can change. This one will always be equal to this one, and this one will always be equal to this one. And for the same reason as with the parallel lines, I can use 2 little lines to show those angles will be equal. In the worksheet that you're going to do, though, we're not bothered about the angles. It's only the parallel sides and the equal sides that it's going to ask you about. The next shape is very similar to a parallelogram, but it's called a rhombus. And the only difference is that it has all equal sides. In the parallelogram, this side was equal to this side, and this side was equal in length to this side. So it was a little bit, often people say it's a rectangle that's been pushed over or slanted. A rhombus, though, is a square that's been pushed over or slanted because you can see the little lines on it. All the sides are equal. It also, though, has parallel sides, just like the parallelogram. Those are parallel to each other, and those are parallel to each other. And by the way, it doesn't matter which way around you do those little arrows. I could have done those are parallel to each other and those are parallel to each other. I just have to make sure I match the notation so I'm showing which sides are parallel to each other. So a parallelogram and a rhombus both have 2 pairs of parallel sides. So your square, your rectangle, your parallelogram, your rhombus, they both have 2 pairs of parallel sides. And the final shape, what's that shape? It's a kite. You might have heard it be called a diamond. Diamond isn't a mathematical name for a shape. Forget about the word diamond. This is a kite. We call it a kite. Look at the picture. Do you think any of those sides are parallel? Okay, so a kite has no parallel sides. So if you thought some of them were parallel, have another look. Because what actually happens is if you extend this one and kept going, they do get ever so slightly closer and closer together. And all the way up somewhere over here, they would join together if I kept going. Okay, no parallel sides. The only thing a kite has is 1 pair of equal sides. 1 pair of equal sides. This picture now, you will have to make some notes on. Some of the questions you're going to do on the second part of the sheet, they do need you to know this stuff, so you can screenshot it, look at it later, you can pause it on this page, you can rewind it and go back to it, but this page is quite important and it'll help you with some of the worksheet. If you want to make notes, print it off, stick it in your book, whatever you want to do, this page is really important for you to remember. These are quadrilaterals, four-sided shapes. Tomorrow we're going to look at triangles and what we call polygons, which are lots of different sides. But today, quadrilaterals, four-sided shapes. Make sure you know the names of them and the properties that I've talked about today. Okay, today, the work I would like you to go and do now, I would like you to complete the worksheet that's attached. That's a range of questions. You can do this worksheet by screenshot, photo, write on it. I know I've seen some of you put it into an ebook and write on it that way, that's fine. The other way you could do it is print the sheet off, or I've done it so you should just be able to write the answers in your book, but I need to see a picture of the answers in your book or a picture of your answers on the worksheet if you print it off. So you must submit a photo of that. The other thing I would like you to do is Heggarty Maths Clip 821, which I've set for you. This one, it only has 7 questions. It shouldn't take you too long. And that is just talking about the way we label lines. So, for instance, that would be line CD. The only other thing I want to point out is another word that I'm not sure if you remember. I know you will have been taught it. This line is a horizontal line. It's called horizontal. It comes from the word horizon. So if you look out of the window when the sun is going down, you will see just a bit of the sun, and we call that the horizon, where like the hills and the sky meet, and that's the same. That's this line. Horizontal comes from the word horizon. This line is called vertical, and it just goes straight up. Spelled that wrong. Sorry, I've spelled that wrong at the end. Be careful of your spellings. Vertical. So that line is vertical. So that is those words are used in Heggarty Maths 821. So you do need to know what they mean. So you must do 2 things, and it should take you about an hour in total. You must, after this video, complete the worksheet, send me a picture of all questions, please, and complete Heggarty Maths Clip 821. Remember, you must get over 80% on the Heggarty Maths Clip. If you struggle with it, watch his video, his explanation as well as mine. And if you don't get 80%, do it again. Watch the video, do it again, but you must watch the video if you don't get more than 80% the first time. Go and get on with work. You've got a lot of time to do them, so you should have plenty of time. And hopefully see you soon. If you have any problems, please email me or message me on Firefly. See you soon.